I'm super excited to dive into this content today with our amazing panelists that you see here. But before I begin, I'm going to do a fun spiel about modern sales pros. And if you have been joining us, welcome. And if you have been with us throughout the whole session, a.m. Pacific, but I'm going to do the Modern Sales Pro spiel again. So today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. My name is Angelica. I'm one of the community event managers at MSP. And for those of you who are not familiar, MSP is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales revenue, operations, and enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. And I'm going to pass it off to our amazing sponsors that you see on this slide here. And our RevEx Fest wouldn't have been made possible without these amazing companies. So big kudos to them for making RevEx happen. And please be sure to visit the sponsor tab right next to the stage agenda and sponsor at the top hand corner to check out all this amazing companies and all the resources and links there. Now I'm going to talk about our agenda tab. Today is day one, and we had a jam-packed session throughout the day. Thank you for sticking with us. We also have one coming up next with Robbie, but we have 2 more days of RevEx Fest, so definitely check out the agenda and check out all the amazing speakers and content that we have lined up. Now, I'm going to talk about the overall flow of this event. So I'll go through some housekeeping notes and some speaker introductions. And then I'm actually going to be moderating today's session. So I'm going to be moderating and passing off some discussion prompts about this awesome topic that we're going to be diving into today. And then please use the Q&A function at the top right-hand corner. So you can ask all your cool questions to our moderator that we can answer live. And then we'll do a round robin on key takeaways. Now, on to our housekeeping. So familiarize yourself with Goldcast. If you're new here, it's a really fun platform. Again, I have the agenda, sponsor, people, speaker, photo booth even, and use the chat, make some friends. We love to know where all of our community and new members are calling in from. I'm currently in Toronto, Canada. We celebrated our Thanksgiving yesterday. So if you want to put your city or state or country and your name, feel free to do so in the chat. We love to see where everyone's calling in from and ask your questions. We have an amazing array of panelists that we have at our fingertips here. So please take advantage and ask your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. And then also don't forget to check out their LinkedIns. Once we do the introductions, I'll send the LinkedIns over. Now, enough about me. I'm going to pass it off to our amazing panelists that you see here. Again, I'm going to be moderating the session, but I'm going to pass it off to Adam to say a few words about himself, and then you can popcorn it over to Russell and Colin.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, hey, great to be here. I really appreciate the invite. I'm Adam. I lead sales and CS over at UserGems. Just a 20-second on UserGems. We were basically created because everybody loves easy wins, and nothing's easier than selling to your former buyers and product users and other people who know your product or service. And the good news is there's a lot of opportunity to capitalize on that because we've seen the change rate of job change rate about 20-30% a year. And basically, UserGems helps companies implement an end-to-end automated solution for job change capture all the way through personalized outreach. So we can help you build a warm pipeline at scale. Thanks again.
Cool. How about we pass it over to Russell?
Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Sack, and I'm the head of revenue at Second Nature, based in Montclair, New Jersey. As many say, the Brooklyn of New York. The Brooklyn of New Jersey, sorry. What we do is Second Nature provides sales simulation software. And in today's day and age, and the speed at which sales moves, it's extremely complicated to get salespeople comfortable, confident, and competent with all the ways and the sales pitches. And what we allow salespeople to do is practice their two-way conversations in a safe space using an AI-powered avatar that our customers choose a whole variety of different personas. And what we see is that sales readiness can increase as much as 45% on specific types of pitches with as little as 30 minutes of practice per month. We have a variety of different customers across technology and other industries. And I'm excited to just be a part of this because we are definitely in an emerging category in both AI and powering role play conversations. Colin, over to you.
Thanks, Russ. And Angelica, you're doing great here moderating. Appreciate you having me here. Colin Spector, VP of Sales for Orem, based out of New York. I'm actually in Long Island, New York, so just an hour outside of New York City. Formerly was in the city, now out here in the burbs with the fam. So Orem, we are a live conversation platform. Our whole goal is to get your sales reps into more instant live conversations with your target market. And how we do that is using the latest in machine learning and AI to connect your sales reps to where all your buyers are through the medium that they always have on them. And that's their phone, right? Every buyer has a phone. Every person has a phone these days. And so Orem, the way we like to describe it, is the fastest way to a live conversation, delivering as many conversations in one day as a sales rep will typically have in 1 week. So a whole new category, a really novel idea and approach to prospecting. And so excited to participate in this panel with Adam and Russ here today, and in new defining categories here.
Amazing. Thank you all for that wonderful introduction. We have such an array of vast information here with such wealth knowledge of each of you that I'm really excited to dive in and hear from each of you your experience in your organizations on selling the new sales leadership in emerging categories. So how about we start off with the first discussion topic, hiring for a specific type of seller who can thrive in an education-focused sale motion. Russ, can you tell me a little bit more on how you hire for a specific seller in your org?
Sure. For us, it really had to do, we mixed it up in our hiring. So I hired some people who had a lot of experience with doing enterprise selling because we have a enterprise sales motion. And then some individuals who had come from selling next generation technology, but didn't necessarily have all the sales experience. But everybody needs to be a good storyteller because it's not only about the data, but it's about educating and making it relatable to the end user about, well, what this experience is going to be with using the product. But also being very specific. Salespeople sometimes don't want to deliver what it doesn't do. But when you're doing an emerging category, you certainly need to highlight, look, it's not going to do this, it's not going to do that, it's not going to do this. So someone who's comfortable with delivering both the benefits and the things that the product doesn't yet do, because you want to set those expectations appropriately.
Absolutely. And Adam, do you have anything to add on to that? Any experience?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Russ, definitely looking for a range of experience, not necessarily, 2 to 4 years or 3 to 5 years. I think there's a lot of value in having a range of experience across the team. So that way, especially, I think it's probably a fair statement to say that most companies selling emerging tech are also fairly early on and in their infancy. And so in my opinion, you want to have a mix of experience levels. So you have some people, so you have a wide variety of strengths on the team, because we know that there's going to be a lot of kind of creation of process and assets and testing things on the fly. And some people who are better at that than others. And so you really want to foster a collaborative environment. I think there's no better way to do that than have people that come from different experience levels. And probably the other thing that I think is really important, and Russ kind of mentioned it as it relates to storytelling, but I think about it maybe a little bit differently, is do I see this person being a good coach to our prospects, right? Because we are in a position of presenting them with a new idea or a novel concept, and are they going to be able to bring that prospect to their, or are they going to meet that prospect on that side of the table and really just have a consultative conversation about it? And a lot of times what that really means is, as a coach, is can I take something that's complex and can I break it down into smaller, bite-sized and digestible pieces of information that I can wrap my arms around. And to me, I think when we're going through that, we generally will test people in the interview process by putting them through like a mock scenario. And we're not really looking for all the specifics there, but we're looking for how did you digest information that's available externally, and then help us as the prospects in the mock environment. Could we get a clear understanding of what you're trying to present to us? So the natural coaching ability or teaching ability, is that there?
Thank you. Colin, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and those are great points by Adam and Russ. I think when you're charging in and really creating a new category, the sales approach is different than selling a commodity, right? It's really the way we describe it internally, and I'm sure others describe it this way. It's really an evangelist sale, right? And your sales reps, they need to be excited about what you're representing, and they need to seek out believers. And so in the hiring, people that believe in digital transformation or believe in being one of the first to try this new way of doing things. And so you want to find, in terms of hiring profile for sellers that are going to represent your technology or your service offering, which is a category defining, kind of disrupting new way of doing things, the hiring profile, you should look for people that in the interview bring that excitement, right? They bring that sizzle, as we call it. And coupling that with, the attributes that Adam described, right? They're consultative. They could be a partner to the buyer. They can build a business case with the buyer, because in new categories, there's no set budget for what we sell here. We're going to have to go and create budget out of nothing. There are going to be a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainties, especially in the early days, of where that budget's going to come from. Once you kind of get traction and you look for the kind of breadcrumbs of success of where you've gotten budget from, later sellers, you have a playbook to kind of wrap around. But in the early days of category creation in emerging markets, it's really about evangelizing, finding the believers, looking for reps that have that excitement and that creative wherewithal to help solution and orient the playbook. And so I think just to get real specific, you want people that are comfortable with uncertainty and doubt. They're very solution oriented, that can drive through because they believe, they have so much conviction themselves. So yeah, I just want to round out the points that both Adam and Russ brought here.
I like the sizzle, Colin.
Yeah.
I already put that in our scorecard, the sizzle factor. No, that's good. And I think we look for something similar as well. And I found myself, while thinking about this concept, thinking about more the sales organization, our readiness to support the sales reps in this type of an environment. And we also look at, do we believe this person to be self-sufficient and self-aware? Because we may not have the coaching program stood up to the extent that we want it quite yet, or the mentoring program, or whatever, types of forms of enablement that take place in your organization. And so we do need people who can go out there and make it happen, and create on the fly as well. Because, I think there's so many times where in a market that's a bit more established, there's more detail and information out there that is readily accessible. I think the buyers come in with more specific questions. You've probably trained them to answer, and this gets a little bit more conceptual. And I think anytime you can bring a seller to your team that really makes it a priority to go out there and build a better experience for their buyer, whether or not those resources are available internally, is critically important, and especially helpful if what they're creating then can be replicated, across the larger team.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering the first kickoff question. I'm going to take a pause and I'm actually going to introduce our amazing moderator for this session who is having technical difficulties. As you know, the beauty of live events, technical difficulties do arise. So I'm going to leave the moderating for a professional, Michelle Baker, to do a quick introduction, and then we can go back into the discussion topic that Colin and Adam and Russ were kicking things off. And I'll come back for the closing remarks. So Michelle, take things off.
Thanks so much, Angelica. Yeah, Michelle Baker quickly said, I'm known for igniting confidence. My passion are female founders, women in business, and sales leaders. And I really work to help people to develop unstoppable confidence, a radical responsibility, which allows them to deliver repeatable and sustainable results. So that's the work that I do. So I came in a clip and I caught Colin talking about uncertainty and doubt, and that's my mastery, right? Because sales is consistently uncertain. It creates such an emotional drain on people that most people aren't aware of and talk about. And as Adam mentioned, you need people who are self-aware, who are self-driven. And how do you capture those people when you are in these emerging markets? Because they're not going to get a lot of support. They're not going to have. So this conversation that you all are having is powerful, because that's where we are as the industry with sellers, looking for people who can build on something that is sometimes aspirational, yet and still keep themselves motivated and focused and hitting targets. So I love where I kind of fell into this. And the example is I came into uncertainty. I couldn't figure out how to get my browser to turn my camera on, and I could have gave up and panicked, but you still come in knowing that you have excellence and you're going to deliver. So let's keep this conversation going so everybody can figure out how to bring on people on their team that have that type of personality and skill set so you can grow your business. So did anyone want to expand or say anything addition to what was said, or were you just going to just keep moving forward and talk about the differences between leading teams, building teams versus, taking on saturated teams? So you guys tell me, because I kind of jumped in. Where do you want to go?
I think we can keep going with the next topic.
Yeah, so the next thing we're talking about is the difference between leading a team in a new into a new category versus continuing to have them work on something that's already diluted and saturated. So how have you seen that, or how are you able to do that? Because this is where, again, you're talking about that doubt, that uncertainty, that self-aware. They're really going to need this when you move into a new category. What are some of the tools or the ways that you are able to hire and then develop people so that they can do that well?
I can go first, if you'd like. Yeah. I think one of the key things in an emerging market is there's the natural areas, which is market education, how to make the business case, where does this fit within an ecosystem, educate the buyer. But I always like to stress that in a saturated market, you've got narrow competition, multiple people who are very similar. Feature, they may have an existing system, you may be in a replacement. Then you go into also still in an established market form, right? Stuff that's similar, right? Still has similar features, maybe different. So in a narrow category, you've got multiple cars you can choose from. Same price, same power, same features. Form, okay, maybe now you have something that's a hybrid or gas, still similar. But when you're in an emerging market, you have to focus on the need. So what is the need? Like, and my analogy is maybe you're looking for a car, but instead you could take the bus or a taxi. In an emerging market, you're competing against alternative needs, right? And then also alternative resources. So you're in a much more muddy gray area. Okay, the resource competition is doing it internally, budget, time for learning about this new solution. So you need to have sellers who can focus in an emerging market on the need and resource competition and educate the buyer. Oh, this is how you can make the business case for the budget. This is why this solution is much better than your existing one, even though they're very different products. So that's very, very key differences in terms of how you sell, as how we see it.
Yeah. So just to tag on or dovetail on what you said, one of the things the seller is making a business case for the budget. So if I'm hearing you correctly, and Colin and Adam, you can jump on this. So this means that your seller has to definitely have a stronger sense of self, because you are actually doing more educating of your buyers. That's what you said. You're looking for the people who, it's almost an evangel. I can't even say the word. Did somebody say it?
Colin's
Evangelist sale.
Yes, exactly. So mentioning what, jumping on what Colin said. So so when you're looking for those people, right, what are some of the things, so people who are listening are like, yes, okay, I got to get some folks like that. How are you finding them, and where are you? What are some of the ways that you're communicating? And if you don't have it, how do you see it and delineate it? And maybe someone that's already on your team, maybe they have it, but they haven't completely developed it. So
I'm happy to jump on this one next. Like, yes. I think Russ nailed it, and Adam was mentioning earlier as well, right? And I think changing your perspective on the profile here, right? So instead of a salesperson selling a commodity and selling feature versus feature, as Russ was describing, right? Like, I sold payroll services for years, and that's a race to the bottom. Everybody can cut a cheaper check, was a saying we had in the industry, and you really were competing on services. Here at Orem, it's a brand new category. No budget exists for Orem. Nobody ever had a line item for Orem. Now they're starting to have a line item for Orem, as I'm sure they are, for Second Nature and for user gens, right? But then, because we're doing our job well here. And so the way you have to think about the salesperson is they're really sales enablement for your buyer. We need to enable our buyer to sell internally on our behalf. That's the whole concept. They have to sell internally on our behalf. And so in the early days of our hiring profiles, we were doing a bit of Moneyball. We were hiring not necessarily seasoned closers. We were hiring people that were former heads of sales enablement, heads of sales development. Now, of course, we have seasoned closers, et cetera. But you want to find, as others have mentioned, people that have that kind of teaching kind of background, that consultative background. So just to put a bow on that, it's our duty in the sales motion in emerging categories to enable our buyers to buy, and they have to go do all the selling internally, especially at the enterprise level where there's multiple people and stakeholders you need to build consensus with. And so that's through the materials, it's the business case, and pulling in different departments, asking marketing to come in with sales and partner on the budget. And so it takes a lot of internal sale, not necessarily from us as the salesperson, but from the buyer internally.
Yeah, Colin, you kind of touched on a topic that I've always dreamed of doing, but I haven't actually done, which is hiring industry experts as salespeople rather than hiring necessarily salespeople. And I think, like when you're selling for an enterprise and you have every resource under the sun and you're more quarterbacking the deal, you get to bring in the industry expert who kind of tells that story for you and, has all those proof points. And I think, it's interesting that you kind of bring that up in the way that you started hiring at Orem. Actually, one of the things that I made a decision to do here at UserGems as getting started is to hire our sales enablement lead way earlier than I have in prior roles. And that was specifically because, of that emerging market versus commodity. And it's really already paid dividends. We're lucky to have a great sales enablement person, but I think just making sure that that's a priority. And I found that it even forces the larger organization to start to build those funnels between marketing and sales and product and sales. So that way we're getting a little bit, we're maturing more quickly in the way that we prepare the sales team. So by having that individual and having that role in place, it almost demands that those funnels are going to be created. So that way we're getting the right output that we can arm the sales team with. And I think maybe more tactically, when we're interviewing, and we're running through a mock scenario, and as we're training as well, there's two things that I'm not looking for. One is BANT, because it's our job to create the need for BANT, really. And so we want to double down on awareness, on the awareness stage rather than anything else. And the dirty word that I think about is project. Do you have tell me about the project for this? Because again, it's our job to create that project, right? So those are the things that I think I'll generally shy away from if I hear that in a mock scenario. But on the flip side, people who can do the opposite of that, really bring storytelling, like we've talked about, and bring that prospect kind of forward into the conversation, into that from awareness to that interest stage is really where it gets interesting.
Yeah, these are great, and I'm certain that people listening, as they're listening now, they'll go back and listen to the recording, are truly going to appreciate this, right? And I'd love for each one of you or one of you to share like an actual scenario. So let's get a little real world right now, right? So you had someone on the team, or you've had this experience where maybe you didn't hire properly. So I always love that people can learn. You can almost learn more from your mistakes, or it helps other people to avoid mistakes or missteps when they hear others who have not necessarily initially done it well. But I'd love for you to share, a scenario that was challenging as you were helping the team prepare, or the seller prepare, and maybe wasn't the greatest hire, and how you delineated that, and how you continue to move forward successfully despite maybe having a struggle or setback with a seller who wasn't prepared for the role. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do I need to go eeny, meeny? You want to jump in? Let's go reverse. Colin, I'm going to have you go first this time.
Sure. I think, Adam was alluding to it before, but basically, depending on what stage you're at, right? I think all three of us here are from early stage companies that are still in the defining moments of our categories, probably like series, B and earlier. So, with that in mind, it's important that you're 100% upfront with your candidates as well about like where you're at, right? Like what does enablement look like within your company? How like self-sufficient do you need to be? Like how much hunting are they going to have to do on their own versus what's being fed to them? In the early days of a company, like there's probably mostly hunting, and you shouldn't beat around the bush there. You should not set up a candidate to expect they're coming into a plate full of leads. And if you're doing that, you're doing a disservice to them and to your company, because if they don't know how to hunt and they come in and expecting warm inbound and they're a killer closer and they're not going to hit goal, that's a huge cost to the company to have just gotten, someone in the chair because you need to hit a hiring plan. And so kind of a word, to other founders and sales leaders out there is just make sure you're just being honest with yourself about where your organization is, and you're being straight up with all candidates. What does enablement look like? Do you have a full sales school built out? I doubt it's at the level of like going to work for a Snowflake or a Salesforce or someone right at the Series B or Series A stage. And even if you are investing in enablement early, just be realistic on what that looks like, how much kind of self-serving and self-educating you might need to do on your own. If you have, a Gong or a Chorus or a Voma out there, great. Those are starting points, but do the people need to go and find the calls themselves in those right. systems? How clear are the breadcrumbs of success from past reps versus like guardrails and arrows, of where to go, just to put kind of a metaphor there. So, I think the more upfront you are with reps and candidates, you say, look, like you're going to come in here, we're early stage. We don't have a full sales school built out. It's 99% outbound. The reps that follow the process have been meeting and exceeding quota, and you're level setting, and you test for the fact that they've come from that world before. This isn't going to be their first kind of hunting position. I think it's riskier to hire someone that hasn't hunted before. I mean, we've turned down amazing closing candidates that, were enterprise account managers, but they lived off of a book of business and made money on renewals and inherited other customers. And so when you're in a new category, you got to be more of an evangelist type, someone that, comes from maybe a sales development background. And so, I'll pass the mic to someone else to add in from there.
Thank you for that. I love the key point you talked about, the honesty and the integrity of where you are, because it benefits both you and the company. So Adam or Rush, would you want to jump in and share your thoughts on this as well?
I've got two to add to Colin. One is a little bit on top of what he had mentioned around having an existing book of business, but the other is having tech support for the product. In a startup, you've got to do it yourself. So you may have a rep you sell who you're hiring, and you're like, look, you've got to be ready to demo the tech, but it's more than demo. You've got to know it. You've got to love it, right? And some people come in like, I can demo the tech. I'm okay. I gave some demos. No, it's different. It's not the first demo. You're going to have to do demo 2 and demo 3. So that's very important. It's hard. Sometimes you get a person who says they can do it, but they still scared a little bit of the tech. And then the other small thing I always tell people is we don't have a way of doing things that is already established. If you think of a way that's better, don't wait for me, right? I may not even have heard this issue before. And sometimes you have to tell a person multiple times to make sure that, look, there's a better way to do it. You come up with it. There isn't another way we've done it yet because we're still early. So that's the second piece of advice, that's very, very key to make sure that the people know that.
Yeah. I totally. I love the fact you talked about it. Don't wait. Right. Because that is, we, go back to mentioning the self-aware, right? The self-driven, right? And that goes to the confidence in your ability to, instead of asking for, I always say, what is it? Ask permission, ask forgiveness, but have a valid reason why you've made that decision to move forward. Yeah. That's to the benefit of the prospect, the business, and yourself. So great stuff here. Adam, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think great points. Probably the biggest mistake that I made early in my management career was that looks could be deceiving on the resume. And someone may have a great background and come from fantastic enterprise companies, breaks down, right? For all the reasons that Colin and Russ already mentioned. I wouldn't call those individuals order takers in any way, but I guess what I'm suggesting is that we need to be on the the opposite end of that spectrum, and there's a lot of dependency at times on brand recognition and market share in the space already. And, to be able to, it takes a special type of seller, I think, to be able to transition from that environment into an emerging technology environment and one, enjoy it, and then two, also be successful at it. And so I made the mistake definitely of over-indexing on the resume and the job history without really realizing what type of impact I might have. And unfortunately, it led to a couple of early or quick attrits. And that's why I think answering that first question today, about what I'm looking for going forward. It's some of those intangible things and some things like self-awareness, like ability to coach, that really have shot up the chart for me in terms of or the scorecard, in terms of importance.
Yeah, this is absolutely incredible. And just thinking in terms of so we've got sales leaders, C-suite people, we got sellers all listening to this. What would you tell someone like a sales leader, right? Because clearly, if you're in a emerging market, you're looking for more hunters. You're looking for more people who are self-aware. You're looking for more people who are willing to make a decision and take a risk in favor of the business. What would you say to someone about building that team, right? What has been one of your key takeaways for your ability to, you guys are successfully doing it, right? You wouldn't be here if you wouldn't. What would you tell someone is some of the key takeaways that have helped you to keep moving forward and continue to secure people of that capability?
Hire in pairs. and onboard in pairs. And the reason why I bring that up
Nice.
is that in an emerging market, you can hire one person, they're having trouble selling, but you don't know, is it the salesperson or is it the product in the market? If you hire in pairs and they're exactly the same time, you can then see, oh wait, maybe it's us, right? Maybe it's not the two sellers, right? In terms of the progression. And I think that's very important. One of the mistakes I made is I onboarded my entire team almost individually every 2 weeks. And I should have looked at it much more as a team aspect, like you would like building a franchise from scratch, right? This like draft team, because we went from 0 to 10 in 4 months. But I had seen it, I did it more like an independent onboarding. But looking back, I really would have done it in pairs. So I could really track progress together of where are the issues that are consistent between the people and where is it the person having the trouble.
Nice. I like that team aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with Russ. If you can hire in classes, that's ideal. 100%. If you have that opportunity to do that, always believe like that. It's to all the points Russ brought up there, and it's to help your kind of scalability and sanity, if you will, from an enablement perspective, right? Because you're going through it kind of in bulk in these specific points in time, right? Like we're hiring this quarter's class. Once the seats are filled, they're filled, and then next quarter's. And so everybody, is getting that learning at the same time. And then the meritocracy is really bearing fruit from there, right? The performance of that class, assuming they've been assigned the proper territories equitably, they've all gone through the same training. And then you really can see where the rubber, hits the road, what performance looks like.
It takes a lot of discipline to stick to that, although it's the right answer, right? I mean, like you're under the gun. It's hard enough to hire as it is, and you get one, like you want them to start ASAP and you want them to get going, but it does pay dividends. And I've learned that over time especially from our sales enablement leader, who at a prior company, he yelled at me. He goes, "Stop hiring one person at a time. Like I don't want to run these classes every week." And the other thing is get agreement on like what you're hiring for. Like what are the things that you will coach and what are the things that you won't coach. And like we won't coach effort. We're not going to coach effort. If we can't tell that there's high effort and high attention to detail in the interview, then it's not going to work for us, because we know that we need that type of person to come in, and we'll wait for that. But there are things that we will coach, and it doesn't need to be perfect in the interview process, because if we see the other things that we're interested in, then we'll bring them in and we'll do our best to get them up to speed on those areas that we think we can coach on. So just kind of, I guess it's more around the lines of having a hiring thesis that you're all comfortable with. I wouldn't say we're great at that right now, but we're working on it. And I think the sooner you get there, the better, because as you're selling an emerging tech and growing a team, one of the hardest things that can hit you is early attrition.
Yeah, amazing. And just thinking about your team. So now, we're going through the process. Is this what you're looking for? You're hunting, you got your hunters, you're hiring, you're tweaking and refining, getting people up to speed. Now it's the internal, right? What would you suggest? Because one of the questions is like to partner with marketing, because, how do you have your sales, because going back to the earlier question of educating your buyer, well, marketing is, partnering with the seller so that marketing and sales are working together to empower the buyer to a better result. How do you guys create that cohesiveness within your, department heads and, marketing and sales? And should I pick someone? Adam, I'll go pick you first.
Yeah, sure. No, I was actually reading Jeremy's comment as well that he dropped a little while ago, but it was also on the topic too. Having the sales and marketing aligned, and here at UserGems, like we're incredibly lucky to have a marketing team that understands the impact of social and influencer network and content strategy to drive awareness, and so we have a lot of good content to use in early stage discussions, and we make it a point to try to create a feedback loop there. I think there's, especially now, like there's a lot of tools available to like a Gong or a Chorus to help you capture that information. And so I think it's it's really important to develop that funnel of information to marketing, back to sales, so that way we're constantly adjusting how we're speaking to the market, and making sure that what we're saying out in the market on the marketing side is matched by what we're actually saying when we get on the phone, that story we're starting to tell, because those things can be radically different sometimes, and it can really take away from, I think, that element that you're trying to create, in those early stage awareness conversations.
Yes, Colin or Russ, do you have anything to add to that? Creating that seamless conversation.
I think 100%. First of all, like tight alignment, as Adam mentioned, right? Textbook. Of course, you need tight alignment between marketing, sales, and customer success. I'd say in the earliest days of your company, you might not have marketing, or you might not have formal customer success, and you might need to be that kind of all-in-one and that sole evangelist. But as you start to build that marketing function, the way we've always looked at it was, if you're familiar with like crossing the chasm and like the curve of adoption, right? And we've always trained, we still train our sellers on this, to focus on believers, right? And these are the people earlier in the adoption curve, the people that already believe in digital transformation. They've already bet on AI technologies or some of our partner ecosystem technologies. And for us, because we're a phone conversation platform, they already believe in outbound phone sales and cold calling and even talking on the phone to their inbound leads. It's already part of their playbook, and not one where we're going to have to teach them the basics of the playbook. When you have marketing come in, marketing can start to provide the content to how do you build a calling culture? How do you start to make calls and objection handle, and where are the frameworks there? And you can start to pump out content for people that might not have the basic building blocks you need for your product to be successful. And then later on the adoption curve, where folks might not yet be believers, marketing can start to put messaging ahead of where you're going, right? And so as your sellers start to capture each phase of that adoption curve, you have that marketing air cover, so you're not such a novel concept by the time your sellers are going direct, and banging on the door into a buyer personas that are at that respective stage in their life cycle, right? They're evangelists or they're innovators in terms of the buying persona. And so from a customer success perspective, we have CS involved in every deal. And they are actually our solution consulting team is part of our customer success organization. That's our pre-sales team. They're involved in every sales campaign. And we look at our pilot, our free trial, our pilot process like your implementation. And so you're going through that customer success experience even before you become a paying customer. And so the handoff is seamless. And I think that's a different way than kind of in the years past of SaaS, when the seller would sell and then it would be a hard handoff to customer success. And they'd go through some sort of implementation period. But then you had risks of things like pre-churn and the seller, painted a picture of one thing, and then after implementation, it was something else. And so I think in this day and age, when most of our products, I believe everyone here, they're much more approachable. I know, user gems, you can try, even with an upload just to see what it's like. And I believe Second Nature, similar story. I've seen the demo of the product. So you want to have a very approachable sales motion where you reduce the risk of what happens post signature as much as possible. And also your customer success team is not getting anything kind of tossed over the fence as it used to be described, even just 5-6 years ago in SaaS.
Yeah. Incredible. Great stuff. Russ, I see you've unmuted. So go ahead, Russ. I was just going to ask you.
I was unmuted because I had a crying child. Not because of me, but episode. For us, in terms of the marketing and sales alignment, was one thing I wanted to talk about, and it's challenging for marketing. One thing that we've tried to do is get the salespeople to capture experiences on video. Why the win happened. What are some of the challenges with the product? Try to get that captured and then distributed out and shared. So we'll use a tool like Loom, right? Just capture quickly and show why you won. And then they ask for marketing, is especially if you're in a hard to understand category and how the technology works, right? AI is everything. Give me some analogies. Marketing, help us with analogies, help us with metaphors, so that when we're talking to the buyer, we have easy to explain English, right, for the buyer to understand the comparisons of how we're doing. And just, that's what we've asked Mark, give us some analogies, give us some of those exercises so that the sellers can help make the case.
Yeah, it's great. I love that. What you guys are consistently talking about are, stories. I always say facts tell, stories sell. So that's what, getting believers, because believers believe in the story, right? They want to know more about how and what this is going to help me create in the future of how we're moving forward. So you guys have that seamless, that conversation. And then jumping on, we have a question that kind of tags on in which you talked about the client experiences. Kevin Gong has asked, do you guys have any tips for scaling the seamless conversation from go-to-market into client success or any other post-sales interaction? So again, you're in categories where you're almost building the sales process, not almost, really, you are. So he's basically looking for that tip, right? What have you been doing where you're taking that conversation from your market to your client success, because that's what creates the repeatable, is that client success, and in your post sales, the follow up and follow through interactions.
I think, and Colin kind of mentioned this earlier, but that the team sell like hell, right? And the bring in customer success early and often, and let them take the wheel on some of those late stage calls too, and even work through onboarding planning or project planning, right? And that's a mutual handoff document that's also customer facing, that hopefully decreases time to value on the onboarding process and that implementation period. The thing that we're actually rolling out now, that this will be my first time doing it in Oregon, was maybe it's common elsewhere, but it was a great idea from our CS lead, was letting the CSMs score the customer fit after the implementation period has been completed. And so I'm sure it'll open up some interesting conversations between seller and CS. But what we'll do is try to build a program around that. Make it fun as well. Maybe drive some contests and incentives around it. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is tell stories internally about what was the impact of having CS in early, if they came in early. What were the things that really led to this customer getting started quick and off the ground and up and running quick? What are those things that then we can then bake back into our talk tracks and our slide decks and whatever we're using on the pre-sales side to really drive home the fact that although we're an emerging technology, we're in a great position to make sure that you're going to drive super high ROI.
Yeah, thank you. I love that you are. The interesting part will be to see what happens once they start grading, how it impacts the cycle and how it impacts how the sellers are at a certain juncture throughout the sales process, and the improvements you're able to make from that information. So thank you for sharing that. I think Jeremy has chimed in again, but did anyone else want to answer to that CM and their post interactions, sales interactions, before we move on?
With us as a small company, we moved customer success into product. And what that enabled us to do is really closely align the product delivery with the sales motion. So customer success is actually responsible for helping to deliver the product that sales is selling. So they're closely intertwined. There's very little handoff that's required between the two, because product has been involved right from the beginning with helping and supporting the implementation. So that's how we've made it more seamless from a implementation perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Colin, any adds to that?
Yeah, I think adding on to what Adam Adam shared, like they're scoring, the CS is scoring based on their kind of ideal customer profile. I think you can look at the CS score, but also look at who renews, right? Who renews and maybe who expands, and what attributes are shared amongst that core customer base, right? So like year one, yeah, we're all figuring it out, product market fit. But years 2 and 3, you've got some great data there on who stuck with you, who grew with you, and that should further refine your ICP, your ideal customer profile, who your SDR team is filtering for, who your AEs are filtering for, and then yeah, maybe you run some spiffs around focusing on them, or just get really tight on qualifying. Because at the end of the day, retention and expansion, that's what makes a healthy subscription business. And so, if we're all rowing in the same direction there, it's better for all of us, especially if we're shareholders. Just like one more tactical piece, share the sales content that all the AEs put together with the CS team, upload it to Salesforce, the champion deck, the TCO, the ROI calculators, any of that enablement material. And there's so much that probably goes into that sale at any one of our organizations, and the folks out there have, a shared file with your CS team, and that becomes the North Star for the MBR, the QBR, and ultimately the renewal. What does that customer think they're going to get in terms of value realization by the first quarter, by the 6 months, by renewal? What kind of ROI were they expecting? And then we all know very clear as day, are we on track towards renewal or not?
Absolutely. This is great. I will say, if I had to summarize what you guys have given the audience and the listeners today, is transparent communication creates loyalty internally and externally. I mean, that's literally what you guys have talked about this entire time, about being transparent, being clear, being honest, being integral, having integrity with your potential sellers, within your departments, and with your, believers, those fanatic clients, so you can create the sustainable, repeatable, expanding business in these emerging markets. So before we do a quick round robin of the one thing you would, want to leave people with that they could implement, or, something that they could do to help them with their sales success. Adam, you had a question. I don't know if you wanted to answer that, or
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Jeremy. And I was having a conversation around that the other day. So I think early on, CS is even still learning how to create a successful customer. But after a while, you've done a couple hundred of them or whatever it is. They are literally the experts in the entire world at doing the thing, making customers successful with this new type of technology. There are no better people on the planet Earth than UserGem's customer success managers at helping people build programs around repeat business with champions and product users. There's not a single other person in the world outside of our CS team that's better at that. And so now you get to bring them in as actually that industry consultant type that we talked about way earlier in this conversation. And the value that they bring to that pre-sales discussion is immense, right? And it comes from it shifts the conversation from a sales conversation to a consultation, about how to drive more pipeline, or about whatever your product value proposition is. So I think that ultimately is the biggest difference, is realizing that you've got this amazing internal resource and basically consulting division within your own organization that can really help customers try to figure out what they need to figure out.
Well, thanks so much for answering Jeremy's question. Jeremy, I believe Adam's LinkedIn LinkedIn link is in the chat, so click and connect with him. DM him if you want to have a one-on-one. It sounds like he'd be willing to do that. Round robin. So what is the one thing? And you're watching the timer at the bottom left. So what is the one thing you would leave someone with who is looking to expand the sales team into an emerging market?
I'll mirror what Colin had said, which is you need people who bring the excitement and enthusiasm. In an emerging market, you need people who are passionate and energized and ready, and and buyers know that. They see it. And that's one thing I say that's that je ne sais quoi, as they say in French, that I don't know, but you're going to see it on that person, that they bring excitement and enthusiasm. That'll take you a long way in an emerging market.
Yeah, exactly. Colin or Adam, your one thing?
Sure. Yeah. And I'll say, as Russ mentioned, you want those people who are excited, but I'd say also from your buyers, right? Like on that first call, especially in the early days when you're in, it's sink or swim mode. I mean, it's still sink or swim mode, but in the early days, you can't, as we have an expression, don't chase foul balls, right? A lot of reps get shiny object syndrome. They go chase what they think is a deal, but they don't really have a champion. It's not a real deal. Focus on someone that gets excited about what you're solving. They are a believer. You don't have to challenge or sell them into becoming a believer, especially in the early days. You need someone that already believes in solving this problem. And in the very earliest days of you trying to figure it out and get that traction, that's most critical. There's a huge opportunity cost to chasing a foul ball and trying to convince someone after challenging them a couple times. And so that would be the one piece to take away here. Focus on the believers.
Yeah, I love it. Adam?
And Colin kind of stole mine. So what I was going to suggest is something very similar. Like know exactly, figure out who's buying right now, who are your early adopters, and whether it's by vertical or by size. If it's HR tech, you keep banging that door until you bust it down, right? And what'll happen is you focus. You'll earn more social proof in the space. You'll have more reference customers. You'll have more case studies that are relevant to those same buyers. So it's very easy to go wide and lose focus. Fight that urge, bang down those doors, and let the results start to build upon themselves.
Well, thank you. So I want to wrap this up and say thank you to our panelists, Adam, Colin, and Russ. This has been absolutely inspiring and engaging and informative for people who have participated. And we have Angelica, who's come in to wrap us up.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for attending. Michelle.
Oh, she went mute. Can you hear her?
No, lost the sound.
There we go. I'm back. Technical difficulties, everyone. But thank you, everyone, for attending today's session. And thank you, Michelle, for jumping in and moderating, and our panelists today. Again, as Michelle had mentioned, please add them and follow them on LinkedIn. They're more than happy to answer all your questions if you have any more. And before we wrap up, I'm going to introduce our next session with our Enabling the World Sales Management, Enablement, and Leadership with founder of HighSpot coming right up next. So stay tuned. Go ahead and get coffee, get tea, get water, and stay tuned for the next event. Everyone, thank you again for joining in, and I will join our panelists in the backstage. Again, thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.